What made you come here to support Puff?
I'm supporting Puff because he's innocent, and I'm wholeheartedly believing his innocence, and I know he's innocent. So
you say you know he's innocent?
1,000%.
Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
Now, as far as jury selection goes, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that both sides expect to have all of this done in the matter of 3 days. Now, given just how high profile this trial is, I was kind of stunned that they seem very confident that they will be able to seat a jury in that amount of time.
This is going to be such a massive trial, like maybe the biggest Hollywood trial. God knows which way it's going to go. Is it going to go on for weeks? And
for sure, weeks.
At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes. As his lawyers argue, the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way. The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now. That will test whether one of music's most prolific figures used his power, wealth, and fame exploit both women and men for decades.
Federal trafficking, racketeering, and charges beginning Monday morning.
Do you still think that, because there is this public perception, that there are celebrity tapes involved in this case?
No.
Do you still think that there are minors involved in this case?
I'm certain no.
Okay.
And again, when you say this case, we're talking the criminal case.
The criminal case.
In the
criminal,
I know that.
In the criminal case.
In the criminal case, no. What happens is if people go into a trial believing the firepower on the prosecution is so strong, I mean, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 95 that it's so strong, but it goes down to an 88. That helps the defense because everybody goes in thinking, wow, they're going to prove this and they're going to prove this and they're going to prove this. And all of a sudden, none of it's there. I think that actually helps the defense.
Back up a little bit, please.
How can you support your father? How do you support him moving forward?
We have the latest from federal court in the Sean Combs criminal case. Status of jury selection, what Diddy's going to be wearing, violation of a gag order, rejecting a plea offer.
Isn't that, to my mind, that's one of the bigger hurdles in selecting a jury this coming week, is that there is, at least anecdotally, when I talk to people, they have that opinion, strongly held opinion, that there's celebrity tapes, that they've kind of conflated Epstein, and you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell and all of these things into Diddy. There's this idea that somehow this is Epstein redux or something.
He knows the deck is stacked against him. They've got a ton of evidence. Take the plea deal, dude. Just take it.
Well, my guess is that, because we don't know the deal of the plea deal. At least I don't think we do.
True.
Okay.
The last hearing before Sean Combs' trial starts, when he walked into federal court today, he appeared to be looking for his family. They've pretty much been at all of the hearings that I've been to, but there was no presence of his sons or his mother or his sister who had previously been at those hearings.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs back behind bars, a magistrate judge denying him bail, saying that there were no conditions that she could conceive of that would make her confident that he would appear again for other court appearances. The judge saying, my concern is this is a crime that happens behind closed doors. Diddy's lawyers had argued that he had made good faith efforts by showing up in New York, ready to surrender to face these charges, but prosecutors said that he could not be trusted, that he has a history of trying to intimidate witnesses, including some who are going to be witnesses in this case. They urged the judge to remand him.
Would you be open to a plea bargain?
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent. And what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
Elaborate sometimes days-long parties by coercing victims through drugs, threats, and manipulation. They claim to have video evidence, and some of the accusations echo details from over 70 civil lawsuits filed against Combs over the last 30 years.
She did, and when the judge did, Diddy, who was sitting at the defense table with his attorneys, did not show any signs of emotion. He took a sip of water before he was led out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. Now, his lawyers have vowed to fight this. They are going to be back in court on Wednesday before the judge who will oversee this trial and try to get Diddy to be released.
Mr. Combs feels and I think he probably is the only person I know of who might be able to actually accomplish that.
4 days. That's all the time a hip-hop titan has left to convince 12 strangers he's not the villain the headlines scream about. In a drab Brooklyn cell, Sean Diddy Combs rehearses the toughest performance of his life, a plea of innocence against federal charges so explosive they could bury the bad boy empire forever. Prosecutors say he masterminded a 2-decade web of manipulation, drugs, and clandestine recordings. He insists every moment was between consenting adults who chased the same thrill. Who's right? Beginning May 5th, the world finally finds out. But to see how this showdown became inevitable, we need to rewind. Way back to the night a Harlem party promoter decided he would never be ordinary. Stay tuned, because the unstoppable ascent you're about to hear made the inevitable crash twice as brutal. Picture this. 1990, a sweaty basement club on 145th Street. A 21-year-old Sean Combs, pocket stuffed with handwritten invites, convinces NYU classmates to skip finals for a midnight flavor party. The gamble works. Within months, he's interning at Uptown Records, persuading execs that Mary J. Blige should wear yanked-up Timberlands and sing over hip-hop drums. By 1994, he's P. Diddy, founder of Bad Boy, Remix King, and the man who'll teach the industry to sell street swagger like perfume. Money floods in. Multi-platinum albums, designer vodka, a clothing line that makes shiny suit part of the pop lexicon. By 2001, he even dodges a nightclub shooting rap, walking out of court to cheers that echo through Wall Street. Proof, some say, that the man is coated in Teflon. Investors trust the myth, the portfolio rockets toward the billion-dollar stratosphere. But success has a shadow. Whispered stories of marathon after-parties, codenamed freak-offs, trail him city to city. Most shrug them off as tabloid candy. After all, Combs just reinvented the Super Bowl halftime show. Who cares about hotel gossip when the music makes millions dance? Except temptations ignored tend to metastasize, and by the time the next decade dawns, the shadow is gathering names. Fast forward to 2018. The hashtag #MeToo era reshapes entertainment overnight. Major networks axe contracts at the faintest whiff of misconduct. Combs stays publicly unscathed until the civil cases trickle in. A former backup singer claims coercion at a 2012 Grammy after-party. A stylist alleges unpaid overtime morphing into something darker inside Bahamian villas. Each lawsuit settles quietly, amounts sealed. Then, November 16th, 2023 detonates like an air horn at midnight. Cassandra Cassie Ventura, once the muse behind Me and You, files a 35-page complaint alleging years of violence, forced drugs, and secret filming. Social feeds go thermonuclear. Less than 24 hours later, the suit is settled for a rumored 8 figures. No admission of wrongdoing. The public sighs, maybe the saga ends here. But inside federal offices, the timeline is only beginning. Investigators subpoena phone carriers, sift cloud backups, and follow payment trails that spider across 6 tax havens. On March 25th, 2024, agents in black windbreakers raid Combs' Los Angeles mansion and Miami penthouse, hauling away 96 devices. Laptops, servers, even an old camcorder marked 2004 Freaknik. The legend starts to buckle, and when the buckle snaps, an indictment roars in. September 6, 2024, a federal grand jury slaps Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transporting individuals for illicit intimacy across state lines. Cameras catch him surrendering in a charcoal suit, lips pressed thin but eyes defiant. Bail denied. Prosecutors cite intimidation of witnesses and a network of shell companies funneling hush money. Combs' lawyers counterpunch. Every encounter was consensual. NDAs prove adults knew the score. Yet April 3rd, 2025 brings a superseding indictment. 2 new counts extend the alleged scheme back to 2003 and add an under-18 allegation tied to a Caribbean birthday cruise. The government now calls his operation a criminal enterprise aimed at power, profit, and permanent leverage. 3 times the mogul's team offers eye-watering bail packages. private security ankle monitoring, $50 million in collateral, even surrendering his passport. 3 times judges refuse. The message is unmistakable. Celebrity clout ends at the courtroom door. Still, prosecutors hand over a potential plea. Admit to forced trafficking, face 15 years. May 2nd, 2025. Combs stands in front of Judge Subramanian and says, "No, Your Honor." The gallery gasps. Trial is locked for May 5th. Now the stage is set, but the prosecution's story hinges on what really happened inside those so-called freak-offs, and who's brave enough to relive them under oath. Imagine a candlelit penthouse where phones vanish at the door, pink tablets dissolve in champagne, and cameras blink from mirrored walls. Prosecutors say these so-called freak-offs formed the spine of a criminal enterprise that stretched from 2003 to 2024. The blueprint, they argue, never wavered. Lure aspiring singers, models, or social media hopefuls with first-class jets and industry promises, lower inhibitions with party drugs, film everything, and remind guests the footage could surface if anyone talked. 4 women are prepared to tell that story in court. First is Cassandra Cassie Ventura, whose lightning-fast November 2023 lawsuit settled within a day, yet sparked the federal manhunt for hidden hard drives. Ventura will testify that studio session flirtations turned into coerced nights, including a 2007 hotel encounter she claims was filmed while she fought to stay conscious. Victim 2 says she woke up in Miami, unable to recall how she arrived. An ER toxicology report 3 days later showed high traces of benzodiazepines the government links to pills handed out at Combs's parties. Victim 3 describes a Los Angeles compound where guests surrendered phones and were told, "Tonight is art. Just let the cameras roll." Victim 4 adds a darker twist. She was 17 on a Caribbean birthday cruise when she says she was drugged and recorded. Prosecutors insist timestamps on recovered video files line up with travel itineraries and text messages boasting, "I can make anybody obey." Supporting witnesses aim to stitch those moments into a pattern. A former travel coordinator will confirm code-named charter bookings, Jupiter, Pink Lotus, that match the accusers' timelines. A digital forensics agent plans to testify that 96 devices seized in March 2024 raids contain terabytes of encrypted footage, material the government calls extraordinary evidence. A studio engineer will recount Combs bragging that blackmail is just business insurance, while a financial crimes investigator traces wire transfers to shell companies after each alleged incident. And yet, every sensational claim meets an equally forceful rebuttal. Combs' lawyers will open by labeling the prosecution a morality crusade dressed up as racketeering. They'll argue that every guest signed NDAs acknowledging video recording, and that erotically charged gatherings between consenting adults aren't illegal merely because outsiders find them distasteful. They'll lean hard on Ventura's past interviews, praising Combs' mentorship and Victim 2's 5-year silence between hospital visit and police report. Expect long cross-examinations probing why accusers returned to lavish parties if fear truly dominated them. Critically, the defense has hired imaging specialists who will testify that lighting glitches and frame jumps prove government-submitted clips are spliced. One expert claims metadata reveals edits made after the March 2024 raids, hinting at investigative tampering. Lawyers will also parade accountants to show hefty consulting checks cashed by some accusers, payments they'll frame as consensual compensation, not hush money. To cement reasonable doubt, they'll summon 2 former partygoers ready to swear the vibe resembled Eyes Wide Shut cosplay. Weird, yes. Criminal, no. Their closing theme is simple: context. Strip away salacious labels, and you're left with adults exploring hedonism under the glow of stardom. Something jurors shouldn't criminalize because headlines turned it radioactive. But before either narrative sticks, 12 strangers must be chosen to judge the biggest celebrity trial since OJ. Court officials want a jury seated in just 3 days, a sprint for any headline case, let alone one merging hip-hop iconography with trafficking law. Roughly 200 citizens from the Southern District of New York will file into wood-paneled room 26B on May 5th. Voir dire questions probe everything from familiarity with bad boy records to personal experiences with sexual assault survivors. Given TikTok's algorithmic reach, defense counsel may urge sequestration, but Judge Subramanian views it as a nuclear option, effective yet stressful and expensive. Instead, jurors must promise digital abstinence, an oath modern courts increasingly struggle to enforce. Each prospective panelist confronts competing social narratives: believe survivors' banners, wave outside the courthouse while die-hard fans blast "Can't Nobody Hold Me Down" from Bluetooth speakers. Prosecutors prefer jurors who trust systemic patterns. The defense seeks skeptics who question media overdrive. One misphrased answer, Bo, "I grew up dancing to Diddy, but I can be fair," could tilt acceptance or strike. When 12 seats finally fill, they'll carry their own fears. Will trolls dox them? Will family group chats accidentally feed them forbidden links? The judge warns that contempt citations and overnight holding cells await anyone who can't unplug. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, corporate America tallies its own verdict. Long before opening statements, the business world had already begun sentencing. Diageo cut ties in a January 2024 settlement, taking full control of Ciroc Vodka and De Leon Tequila. At least 18 boutique brands fled his e-commerce venture Empower Global once assault allegations multiplied. New York City yanked his ceremonial key to the city, and Miami Beach canceled Diddy Day, signaling municipal reputations were at stake too. Streaming platforms haven't banned bad boy classics, but playlists quietly demoted them. One analytics firm cited a double-digit dip in spins after March 2024 raids. The Revolt Media Network, once his flagship culture channel, faces advertiser exits and is reportedly courting new investors to distance daily operations from its founder. Risk management teams across Hollywood now insert Moral's 2.0 clauses into contracts. If a performer is indicted on sex crime charges, marketing funds freeze in 24 hours. Talent agents whisper that the Diddy clause could outlast the man himself, reshaping endorsement calculus for decades. Which brings us to the true weight of this case. Not just years in prison, but the way power is negotiated in every velvet rope room from here on out. If jurors convict on the headline counts, sentencing guidelines swing toward 40 years, effectively life for a 55-year-old mogul. Even a split verdict could leave him behind bars until the 2040s. A not guilty outcome spares prison, but not purgatory. Civil suits, 65 and counting, will roar back, armed with trial testimony and a lower burden of proof. Investors would still fret over future brand partnerships, and music historians would debate whether a court opinion, or culture itself, ultimately redefined the man's catalog. Beyond the spreadsheets lies a philosophical schism. Advocates see a watershed moment proving fame can't shield predation. Loyalists warn of criminalizing consensual kink and letting viral outrage rewrite due process norms. The verdict will either validate #MeToo's expansion into hip-hop or portray an overreaching state eager to police private adult behavior. Whichever narrative triumphs, law schools, record labels, and social platforms will cite U.S. versus Combs for decades when drafting policies on digital evidence, artist liability, and user-generated smear campaigns. So, here we are. A 4-day countdown, a billionaire in a jumpsuit, 4 accusers ready to relive nightmares, and 12 yet-to-be-chosen citizens who'll decide whether the bad boy legend ends in a cell or rewrites itself as a redemption arc. Cameras aren't allowed in federal court, but every podcast mic and live stream thumbnail is pointed at those heavy wooden doors. If you're watching from the sidelines, remember, whatever verdict drops, its echoes will shape who feels safe at label mixers, how contracts guard against abuse, and whether kids born next year will dance to Mo Money Mo Problems without Googling the courtroom backstory. Until the gavel falls, 2 competing truths march side by side, one claiming decades of manipulation, the other swearing by adult freedom. In the end, 12 neighbors will translate mountains of texts, footage, and human emotion into one word: guilty or not. But ask yourself, after everything you've heard tonight, which way do you think the scales are tipping? Drop your prediction in the comments, because when that verdict lands, the conversation won't stop here.